Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Today on the program we're going to salute Vermonters who make a huge difference in the lives of others. Over the past month, a dozen Vermont employers have been recognized for hiring and promoting people with disabilities. The employers each received a Spirit of the ADA Awards for reflecting the spirit of the Americans with Disabilities Act in their employment practices. Joining me are two guests. I want to welcome Chris Loso of the Governor's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities and Hugh Bradshaw of the Creative Workforce Solutions. Thanks so much for being in here today. Now, Chris, you've just wrapped up National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and that's quite a bit of history to this campaign.
Yes, the National Disability Employment Awareness Month has been in existence for 70 years, which coincidentally the Americans with Disabilities Act, which the Spirit of the ADA Award is named after, has been in place. The law was passed 25 years ago, so it's achievement on both ends at this point. But yeah, 70 years. That's
amazing. Well, now this year involved winners with the Spirit of the ADA Awards. Tell us a little bit about the awards and the winners.
Yeah, the criteria for the awards was really based off of success in recruitment, hiring, and then retaining people with disabilities with a business. And we had a lot of nominations that have come in, and the 12 that we ended up choosing, I joke with everyone else, like all the other ones that were in there, we had at least 30 or 40, if not more. Yeah, the one that we chose, like, well, at least we have them all stacked up for the next 3 or 4 years, because there's a lot of businesses out there that have done very well with this.
Now, is there a theme this year?
The theme this year for National Disability Employment Awareness Month is my disability is one aspect of who I am. Mm-hmm. And with that theme, it's really saying that, listen, I have a disability, but I'm much more than just my disability. It's one aspect only.
And so could you tell us a little bit about the awards and the winners?
Yeah, the award winners spread across the state of Vermont from 12 different districts. We worked very closely with Creative Workforce Solutions, which is an initiative through the Agency of Human Services, which you will talk about in a few minutes. But the focus was on the successful employment of people with disabilities. So we've had businesses such as the Label Shopper in Bennington. We had Little Dipper's Doodle Children's Center in St. Johnsbury. We had the Branch Lumber all the way up in Newport, Green Mountain Electric Supply here in Colchester. So we really wanted to make sure we had a good demographic across the state of businesses that are working in various communities, which other employers can hear about and learn more about from those other employers.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, too, a real difference in different kinds of businesses. I mean, everything from childcare to retail operations.
Exactly, and that's one thing we want to look at as well, is to make sure that other employers out there say, there are folks working with disabilities working in various aspects and different industries with businesses across the state. I mean, you have Walmart, which is a larger business, and Hannaford's Food and Drugs. We had FedEx, which was located down in the White River Junction area, that have hired people as well. So it runs the gamut.
And so you actually visited and handed out the awards.
We did, and each place was a celebration. So we had folks from the business community that were there. We had people that were with our Vermont State Legislature that were there. We had folks down in Bennington that came in from not just the legislature, but from various agencies that represent the state of Vermont. So it was a nice, for people, for businesses in their area, it was a nice community welcoming. Mm-hmm. And it was great to reach out and to get feedback. And the one thing I heard across the state from various businesses in terms of what was the sense in terms of hiring people with disabilities, what was the biggest aspect and positive of that, and they said building sense of community, which I think is important.
No kidding. And so there was also a special recognition award for a Vermont legislator as well.
Yeah, Representative William Botsow, who's been a champion of disability rights in the state of Vermont. He is now the chair of the House Economic Development Committee. He was really responsible for the huge push for the ABLE Act here. And really the focus was on helping to build empowerment with those with disabilities in terms of being able to save, also for housing, transportation, across the gamut. And he was really a strong power, as were there a lot of people in the legislature to get that passed to help people with disabilities.
And so, Hugh, Creative Workforce Solutions was a sponsor of the awards. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So Creative Workforce Solutions started in around 2008. It was during some of the discussions in the legislature around challenges for change and how to make state government more efficient. And we were approached to really talk about aligning employment services across the state that are provided through agencies and divisions that are working with AHS customers, essentially. Mm-hmm. So one thing we knew was businesses were somewhat frustrated with multiple contacts from various job developers representing different programs and different populations. So we understood there was a real need to get people together and do a more coordinated outreach to businesses and to be able to offer some options to businesses around recruiting and bringing folks on board.
So what do you say to businesses who are looking for good employees?
Well, the reality is we have a very strong labor market right now. Unemployment is very low. Businesses are scrambling to find workers. In fact, they're beginning to raid each other for workers, which is very interesting. So in essence, we believe very strongly that people with disabilities and other people with barriers to employment are really the pool of candidates now. And so the trick is to figure out ways to help businesses bring those folks on board, including helping around some of the training costs and giving them some options for meeting candidates before they make a hiring decision. So that's been very effective, and what we're finding is once businesses understand how to do it, then they're really up and running and looking for candidates to come to them in that fashion.
And Chris, what would you say about that?
I agree. I mean, if I could rate, I would to try to find employees. I would. I have openings all the time, and so I've actually tapped into the disability employment pool, and I actually have now working for my business, which is it's a janitorial company, commercial janitorial business. I have 11 people that work for me across the state of Vermont, so it's not just limited to Chittenden County.
Why has that worked out so well for you, do you think?
Partly is understanding with any job when you're applying for a job is understanding what the roles and responsibilities are, what those tasks are. Mm-hmm. Two is having, working with Creative Workforce Solutions, their folks work very closely with me to understand what my work, what it entailed, to help them when they go back to their component organizations that they work with, is to determine what's the best fit. So it's really like a staffing agency, and in this case, it's not just limited to people with disabilities, but across the board. I've had a lot of success with hiring people with disabilities with the support needed to make sure that they are, one, comfortable in their job, and two, they're performing well, and they have been.
And this is really a critical point, is when we introduce a person to the business, a candidate to the business, and that business brings them on board, we don't disappear at that point. We're actually with the business long term to help support both the business and the candidate. And that's really a level of support that I think businesses really need when they're looking at hiring people who may have some barriers to employment, knowing that there's someone there that can pick up the phone and they can call if things are not quite working out well.
Can you give me some examples of what kind of support we're talking about?
Sure. So a good example is somebody coming on board with Chris may need some additional training above and beyond what a candidate who normally would come through the doors would need. So we can assist with a job coach or somebody to help that person learn their tasks and be clear about what they need to do. And we obviously take that direction from the business, but we use that to really help a person get the understanding that they need, to develop the skills that they need, and really help them succeed.
Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of progress has been made, but is it fair to say that there are still some myths about workers with disabilities, Chris?
Yeah, one myth that's brought up a lot is it's going to cost a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of adaptations that have to be made. In fact, there's studies that prove the exact opposite, that approximately 60% of the people that are hired with disabilities do not need any type of accommodation, and with those that do, it's typically $500 or less.
And Hugh, what would you say about that?
Yeah, that's certainly one. The other one that I think many businesses get hung up on is if I hire a person with a disability, for instance, and they don't work out or their performance isn't where it needs to be, that I'm really stuck with them, that I'm bound by the ADA to keep that worker on board. And that's absolutely not true. If somebody isn't performing, you address it as you would any other employee in your workplace, and you go through your regular disciplinary process. So again, these are things that we help businesses understand, so that the notion of hiring a person with a disability isn't quite as scary once they understand really the nuts and bolts of how to do it.
What about turnover rates among employees?
Yeah, that's a good point. What we've noticed, there's been studies out there, but I've actually also noticed it with my company, is the turnover rate is much lower with people with disabilities versus the general population. So a recent study that came out a couple years ago has stated that the turnover rate with people with disabilities is 8% versus 45% overall.
Wow, that's incredible. And Hugh, what do you find when you're placing people?
Well, I think that's accurate. I think in many cases a person with a disability is very thankful to have the work. There are many, many Vermonters who have disabilities who are either unemployed or underemployed in the state. And so I think in general they're very thankful for it. They tend to be very diligent and hardworking, and they show up, which is something that the employers really need. So, while we don't pitch that and we don't say, well, geez, every person with a disability is going to be the best worker on the planet, it's not the case. They're just like any other worker. But in general, yes, people with disabilities tend to have higher rates of retention, and the employers are very happy with the workers.
Let's talk a little bit about absenteeism. What do the studies show about worker absenteeism?
Again, lower. In terms of specific rates, I know that they had Walgreens had a study where they had made accommodations for one of their distribution centers, and the productivity went up 120%. Another aspect of the study was the fact that the absenteeism rate with those with disabilities was lower. So a lot of that had really the sense was that these are folks that want to work, they want to show up every day, and I noticed it with my business. We have people that come to me with ideas. We have a monthly newsletter. So we have about 85 employees across the state.
Mm-hmm.
I constantly get ideas from people across the board, whether it be someone with a disability or without. I just learned about how to take out scuff marks on a VCT floor from one of my employees with a tennis ball. So
really?
Yeah. So I'm learning a lot.
That's awesome. Are there support services available for employees with disabilities? Hugh, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So obviously, I work for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and that's what we do. We support people with disabilities in finding employment and keeping employment. We can provide a wide variety of things to an individual, including training, post-secondary education. For young people who want to go on to college, we can assist with that. Skill development, we're doing more and more work around developing training pipelines into particular industries, which I think is really the future of workforce development in the state. I start with the end user, which is the business, people like Chris, and figure out what they need, what are those skill sets, and what are they looking for, and then really build training that moves people sort of up that continuum towards the business and that skill level. So, moving somebody from even adult basic ed and getting a GED up through some industry-specific training, I think is really where we're going to see a huge change in workforce development.
Chris, have you found that there are challenges to finding good people to fill jobs?
Yes, and yes. It's been difficult just to find people, and again, in my industry, it's cleaning, commercial cleaning. So, a lot. I have the pipeline set up with Creative Workforce Solutions, for example, the Vermont Department of Labor. There's once you're involved with your industry, you know a little bit more about the trainings that are available. There's one called the Clean Sweep program. So I tap into that in terms of anyone that's going through that training, and I know the people that teach that course across the state when it occurs. So you have to be creative to try to find people for your business and the type of people that and I'm all set to do this, is train them up how to do well in that job. So I think it's a partnership between working with agencies and initiatives such as Hugh and other folks across the state, but also for businesses to say we need to step up too and to provide training and to help to get the right people for the right jobs.
And what would you say to maybe another business owner who might be listening to this about having the luxury of being able to call someone like Hugh to say, this is what's going on, how can you help?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-risk proposition, right? So for businesses out there looking for good people, is to reach out to Creative Workforce Solutions or call me. I always say, call me. I'm a business owner. I'll tell you exactly how it goes down. If you contact Creative Workforce Solutions, talk to one of the representatives. They're all across the state. There's 12 representatives in different districts. They have the conversation. Conversation's free, and to give it a try.
Yeah, and I think just to follow on that, one of the things that we really take the time to do is understand a business. So, as Chris mentioned, we have business account managers statewide who spend every day out meeting business and talking to businesses about what their staffing needs are. But one of the key pieces of this is really understanding the business, so that when we're making referrals of candidates, we're making good matches and making sure that the business is getting what they're looking for. And again, we more and more we're asking the business to help provide some additional training and bring that person up to speed, which again in this labor market more and more businesses are willing to do, because it's a real challenge finding workers. The other piece that I think is important to know is disability doesn't really care what your education level is or what your skill level is or what your particular profession is. So while we have entry-level workers that are a good fit for Chris, we also have bankers and lawyers and all kinds of other high-level professionals as well. So that's something I think businesses sometimes have the misperception that it's all entry-level that we're looking to fill, and indeed we have other folks who have higher skill levels as well.
So where can Vermont employers find out more about recruiting, hiring, and retaining people with disabilities?
So we have a Creative Workforce Solutions site, which is at www.cwsvt.com, and a business can go to that site, and we have a listing of all of our business account managers statewide. As Chris mentioned, we have them throughout the state, and again, again, it's not a hard sell. They're not going to come in and try and push a candidate on you. They're going to come in and try and learn about your business and truly help you figure out how to meet your staffing needs. So I would encourage businesses to visit that site and identify their local business account manager and set up a meeting.
And Chris, how about for you?
Yeah, as the chair of the Governor's Committee on the Employment of People with Disabilities, we have a site that actually links in the CWS as well as other state sites in terms of employment. But I think the key there, our website address is www.hireus.org. What we're going to be doing is, every award that I handed out, I said, this is not a free lunch. I said, now we're going to interview each employee, or excuse me, each employer out there, and then have them really start to develop best practices list that we can use as a guidance to other employers out there. So we'll have that out there by the beginning of next year.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.